I know we've all been in those situations where we feel like we're in a space that we don't belong for whatever reason. You could be the only person of color in the room, you could be the only woman in the room, you could be the only man in the room with a bunch of women and think that you shouldn't be there. So you automatically take yourself out of the running. Can someone give me an example of when they've done that, when they've been somewhere and they just didn't go forward because they felt like they didn't belong there? Yes.
The time I think that was when I was at like a corporate office. There was like a lot of these big corporate people, and it was like a meeting and I was a part of it. But you know how corporate has a specific type of language and the way they were talking. I'm like in high school and I don't know what they're saying, using all these terms, and I just feel like I didn't belong because they were saying all these things and I was like getting half of it, I wasn't understanding most of it, and like they're all nodding and I was just like, I don't know what they're saying. So I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I was like an observer more than like a participant. Two things I learned. One was I don't like corporate. Like I didn't like the experience of like the formalities and all that. It wasn't for me. That's why like I prefer to like have a path where I'm doing my own stuff like entrepreneurships and all that. And I also learned that I have to like do more to like understand what they're saying. So maybe before I got there, right, I could have brushed up on like I don't know like introduction on like how to like talk to people on corporate, or like what these specific terms mean, right? So I could have understood it better. But that was hindsight. So if I had to do it again, I would probably watch like videos on corporate etiquette as well as like the corporate lingo and all that. But yeah, that's just in hindsight.
And it's okay to learn after the fact. I think the key is that not to feel like you don't belong there. Remember earlier I said, don't assume that you're not the smartest person in the room. You're just as smart as those corporate people. They just have more sources. They know the lingo, and you can always go back. I think the point of this video is don't remove yourself from a potential opportunity because you don't think you belong. If you wanted to work in corporate America, we don't want you to say, I'm not going to work there because I didn't understand the lingo. So I like the fact that you said that you would brush up on the lingo and try to learn. And then, contact someone and ask them specifically. And sometimes when you're in the room, don't assume you don't belong. Sometimes it's okay to sit and listen so you can take notes in terms of what you need to learn for the next time. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about what do you do when you feel like you're in a situation that you may not belong. I'm going to use myself as an experience. I'm an executive, and still, when I went into rooms later on in my career, the men would not even give me eye contact. So when I first started my career, I would automatically assume that I didn't belong there because they didn't recognize my voice, right? But later on, I realized that sometimes you have to communicate. I'm the person that said that. Why aren't you looking at me? Okay, so talk about situations you've been in where you don't belong and where you felt like you didn't belong and what you could do to ease that particular situation.
So I'm actually going to bring up my internship again because this is my first internship before I graduated. And I was the only black person in the entire office. And I worked in the fashion district. And it's not a lot of black women and who's even in those spaces. So I was actually at one of the fashion offices, and one of the buyers that I was working with, she was actually like really rude to me all the time. And I thought that it was like a personality thing, but then I realized that she was nicer to the other interns and who were non-black. And I remember literally like the entire internship, I was so insecure. So every vendor that we went to go see, constantly being the only black person, like all the time. So I constantly felt that I just automatically didn't belong in fashion. I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to stick to finance. And it's so, I was like, fashion industry is going to change, things like that. Because these brands that everybody buy from, I was in those offices. So I really thought to myself, like, but the vice president, she really liked me. And that's why I really resonate with what he said, how sometimes people have more confidence in you And I remember going home to my father every day, like literally crying and just feeling like, you know, I'm not good enough. But then I would tell him like compliments that the vice president would tell me, but it still didn't feel good because I never felt like so different from everybody before. So I'm realizing that, and one more thing is that a student actually told me before I took the internship is that his mentor told him, never walk in the room and always think about how like you're the only person who might look a certain way, or like that you're the, basically don't walk in the room trying to look for the next black person, you know, because sometimes we were always trying to connect with somebody with the same background as us, so that way we're more comfortable. But I feel like if that experience never happened, then I would have never really learned much about myself and what areas I need to work on my confidence. So I'm really happy that I experienced that and that the vice president was able to see my talents and, you know, things like that.